Farcaster 101 is an educational series brought to you by GM Farcaster in partnership with Snickerdoodle, building off of their State of Farcaster report, which you can access at snickerdoodle.com. This 12-part series introduces all aspects of the Farcaster ecosystem and helps you get started building your social graph and brand on Farcaster. GM and welcome to Farcaster 101. I am Nounish Prof, and I am one of the hosts and founders of GM Farcaster, and I'm here with Adrienne. Adrienne, introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Adrienne. I am a former software developer, spent my entire career in enterprise SaaS and in the B2B space. I have been on Farcaster for over 2 years and have really found it to be a phenomenal place to meet people and grow a business. And Nounish Prof and I are now hosting a live stream news show on Farcaster called GM Farcaster.
And I'm Nounish Prof. I'm also known as Prof Order in other spaces, and I am an entrepreneurship professor. And now I have moved into full-time working on GM Farcaster, which is a media network that we are growing that's all about Farcaster, including our morning show that we do 3 times a week. And we're excited to be partnering with Snickerdoodle on this series, educational series, Farcaster 101. And this is going to be a deep dive into the decentralized social network that's reshaping how we think about social media. So first off, in this module, we're going to explore Farcaster's unique features, the benefit of decentralized social, and how it offers marketing teams a new way to connect with early adopters, builders, and optimists. Before we dive into that, though, we do want to just kind of shout out the Snickerdoodle State of Farcaster report. So Adrienne, what is the State of Farcaster report?
The State of Farcaster report just came out we're in September 2024. It is a ridiculously comprehensive data analysis on who is on Farcaster, the types of people, their habits, their spending habits, what they're interested in. It was based on survey data and as well as analysis of connected wallets.
And it's amazing. So we're excited to kind of build off of that with this educational series. So we're going to dive in now into what is Farcaster. And we're going to start with going through what to expect in this module. We're going to talk a little bit about the audience and then the platform. We're going to discuss the difference between the protocol versus the client and why decentralized social is important and what's the difference between centralized social platforms and a decentralized one like Farcaster. We'll talk a little bit about the Farcaster ecosystem as well as how you get started on Farcaster, which will be something that we go into deeper in our second module, but we'll touch on it at the beginning. So moving on, we're going to talk about the audience. So the audience on Farcaster is primarily early adopters, builders, and optimists. Adrienne, can you dive into what does that mean? So what does this look like? Who is on Farcaster right now?
Yeah, so I think what we found what makes the audience unique is because Farcaster is a crypto native platform. You might expect everyone to be full on crypto enthusiasts. And while there's a lot of that, what really makes them unique are these kind of 3 attributes. So early adopters, these are people who tend to try out new technology or new products or new things because they're interested in kind of being on the leading edge of progress, I'd say. Everybody is identifies also as a builder. Not necessarily developer, not everyone's a founder, but it has this kind of positive sum mentality of people are writers, bloggers, developers, founders, VCs. So kind of a broad, different roles, but people kind of tend to identify as building and creating new things. And related, it's the vibe is very optimistic. So optimistic about the future, optimistic about the potential for new technology to improve lives. I think because of that, what you find is people tend to be more willing to try new products and be more gracious with giving feedback. So Farcaster, we found, because of this audience, it's like a really good place to launch new products, new ideas, because you have people who are just like, they want to be the first ones to try new things.
I think sometimes that's some of the hardest things that a founder has to do, is try and get that first 100 people to try your product, whether that's a SaaS product or an app or an actual physical product. And we've seen everything from, games and, different shopping sites to candles being sold and being part of beta tests for all kinds of things. So it's exciting to find a willing group of participants who are open to working with you and providing you feedback and learning about what it is you're building. So it's definitely an open audience to a brand who's building something new, for sure.
Yeah. And we'll see if that lasts as Farcaster continues to scale from 50,000 daily active users to 100,000 to 1 million to 100 million, over time. But Farcaster has been described as a Twitter alternative. And one of the biggest differences is the vibe and the vibe and the culture of Farcaster being different than something like a Twitter. We have been criticized on Farcaster as being too nice. As someone who spends all their time on Farcaster, I don't think that is true. I think there's a difference between niceness and kindness and compassion. But it really is I think it's not so much nice as it is safe. It is safe to experiment. It is safe to make mistakes, and it's safe. And because of that, I think it's just the most special place on the internet, that especially if you're kind of wanting to launch products and reach this kind of optimistic builder, early adopter crowd.
Absolutely. And it's not about nice as much as it is about respectful. So there can be disagreements, there can be some, occasional fun dunking and things like that, but it stays on the side of helpful and respectful most of the time. And that's what I really appreciate about it. Moving on to talk about the platform itself and more around the tech behind it. There's a few different values that you can see Farcaster is built on, and 3 of those is transparent, composable, and open. So the APIs are open, the source code for most things are open, and it provides a lot of opportunity to build. So this is part of that basis and foundation that it's built on. And in terms of the platform itself, on the tech side, it's built on Ethereum's layer 2 network optimism. So it is decentralized and permissionless. So unlike centralized social media, which is sort of controlled by either one person or one company, this is open, and it is built on a much broader scale and interconnected. So it allows for a lot of this data to be integrated and used on different clients and different apps via this, and it takes into account the social graph of Farcaster. Can you talk a little bit more, Adrienne, about the social graph itself and why that can be so powerful?
Yeah. So when we say social graph, what that means is it is the people you follow and the people who are following you. So just like any social network, there's a few characteristics, whether you're on a Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, there's certain things that are just always the same. Everybody has a profile, your username, your bio, your photo, and then you can find people to follow and find people you can't. All of that data is fully owned by you, the user, and the way that, as opposed to the corporation. So because Farcaster is decentralized and on a blockchain, you have ownership of that, which also means you can take that with you if you choose to leave. So this is imagine if you decided you didn't want to be on Twitter anymore, you could go to another network, but still retain all of your followers and your following and your identity. And that's kind of the big difference with Farcaster as opposed to any of these other networks, because it's decentralized, because it's built on a blockchain. There's ownership and these other attributes about being transparent, composable, open, comes because of its technology being a blockchain network.
And that's and that really kind of brings us into the difference between the protocol versus the client. So the client, or sort of the app that allows you to access the protocol, which is Farcaster, that's sort of the difference. But most people think of them as the same. If you're only using Warpcast, which is the primary client, you might think of it as being the same as Farcaster. But in reality, there is a much larger aspect to this at the protocol level that allows for this composability and transparency and openness. And what we found is there are a lot of folks building on Farcaster in different ways. So can you talk a little bit, Adrienne, about protocol versus client from just a basic technical perspective? Like, what is the difference, and how should we think about that?
Yeah. And if you have heard about Farcaster, you might have heard, or just even other decentralized alternatives. They can be a little confusing at first. So I don't want to, I think as a user, it doesn't really matter, and it shouldn't matter what the difference is, but we'll kind of talk. So a protocol is it is the decentralized back end, if you will, of social network. It is not owned by any one single entity. The client is really the user interface, or how you interact with that protocol, and can be built. And I think the best way to do this is just with an analogy. So imagine if you're familiar with a Twitter, if you're using Twitter, you log on to, or you go to x.com, or you open your X app, and you're interacting with your data, you're sending posts, you're replying. That whole experience is at the client level. So imagine that. Now imagine, though, if you could access all of the data that is in the Twitter database without asking permission, through an API or directly through the backend. And even in the early days of Twitter, there were APIs, and they were open. And what you saw is there were all these other apps that got built outside of Twitter. There was TweetDeck and a bunch of others that were really popular. And then eventually, as the network got bigger, Twitter pulled access to these APIs, and you could no longer build on top. So, and that is because it wasn't actually built on a protocol, the client. So Farcaster as a protocol is all of the data in Farcaster is open. It's accessible. It will always be. There will be APIs that you can access. You have access to the data, and no one can ever take that away. So the protocol for Farcaster is just all that back-end information. So if you're a developer, you can build on top and be guaranteed that you always have access. And then the clients are just the applications, websites, iPhone apps, Android apps, anything else that you're using as a user to access the information on Farcaster and how you access it.
The other analogy we always hear too is the email versus Gmail analogy, where email is a protocol level, or SMTP is sort of what's happening under the hood. And then Gmail is one way in which we can transact with email. So that's a little bit basic kind of a thinking there, but it kind of gives you an idea of the difference between protocols and clients.
Right. And in the Gmail analogy, if you have a Gmail and I have a Yahoo, we can still communicate, because we're communicating on the protocol layer, even though we're accessing it through different apps. And that'll be the same in Farcaster, which is there's multiple clients. I can use one client called Warpcast. You can use another one called Supercast, but we can still communicate. And even though we're
still see the same cast, no matter which client we're using. Yeah. So similar to the way you still see the same information in your email. So why this is important, like why decentralization is important and why decentralized social, there's a lot of pros and cons that we think about with centralized social networks and why decentralization might be better. So some of the pros of decentralized social is, one thing is censorship resistance. So as Adrian had mentioned, if you wanted to leave one particular client like Warpcast, you could take all your followers and all your data with you to another client. So even if you were somehow deplatformed, you have other options at the protocol level. So that's a big deal. We've seen this happen even at a countrywide level, where folks were actually unable to access Twitter from Brazil, for example, fairly recently. So this is an example of when this type of thing would come in handy, where you could just move to a different client. Data ownership is a big part of the pros as well. And being able to own that data, similarly, that's what allows you to move it to a different client. There is some privacy aspects as well. And monetization is a big piece of this also, because it's built on a blockchain. That means you can easily move crypto funds through this social graph in different ways. So it just needs to have a way to access it and to be built in via different apps or through the clients themselves. And then lastly, some interoperability. That's what allows for all these different clients and apps to work together using the same social graph. What are some of the cons, do you think, for decentralized social, Adrian?
I mean, the biggest one we experience is about user experience. It is getting better every year, every day. And the experience of, I think, Web3 in general is getting better. Farcaster today has an experience that is on par with Web2 networks. You can sign up with an email address. You can sign up using passkeys. You don't necessarily, in the old days when we first signed up, you needed a wallet, you needed a seed phrase, you needed to know a lot about crypto under the hood of how it works, and you don't really today. That being said, the user experience still lags a little bit behind. Farcaster was founded in 2020. It only went permissionless, meaning open to anyone who wanted to go, in late 2023. So it just hasn't had the same amount of time as the other social networks to harden and improve user experience at times. So from a UX, it's a little behind some of the Web2 platforms, though catching up quickly. Related to that being new, you don't have the same critical mass. We talked earlier about how Farcaster it's a smaller user base. In our opinion, we think it's a better user base, and it's where we're choosing to spend all our time. And we think it's really important to pay attention to, because the people on Farcaster tend to be quite influential and active, but it's smaller. You're not going to reach the same critical mass as you are on a TikTok, Instagram, Twitter platform. The flip side of that, though, which is also a pro, which you talk about, it's a lot easier to grow on Farcaster because it's smaller. And like anywhere in the crypto world, I think this is the disincentives, which is there is, I'd say, more of an opportunity maybe for some of the, let's say, bad actors in crypto to try. I mean, we haven't seen much of it in Farcaster, to be honest, but in terms of people using tokenization and maybe crypto features to, what do we want to, I don't know. It's not really on Farcaster, but it could be there. I'd say it's a little whack-a-mole. I mean, this goes to moderation as well as the Warpcast, and Warpcast is the primary client on Farcaster, so we'll use those names interchangeably. The team is very, very active about spam moderation and says like scammers. So it really hasn't been an issue, but kind of over time, because it's a less mature platform, you may see some of that.
And I think, speaking to the monetization incentives, these can also be disincentives to some extent, because there are some things that are built into Farcaster, because it's on a blockchain, where you can use tokens to incentivize behavior and content and things like that. It also can lead to people trying to farm those tokens, and it tends to add on to some spam, but working towards that becoming less and less of a problem. So good and bad. but there are ways to use this in your favor if you're a brand, to be able to incentivize people to grab their attention. And that can be a very useful thing.
Yeah. And that this is just everything. Every pro here has almost an opposite con to it. And this is the trade-offs with blockchain networks. So with a blockchain network, you get permissionless innovation. Anyone, you have, like we said in the last slide, you don't have to worry. Like the data is open. It's protocol data. Anyone can build on it. Anyone can build on top. It's permissionless. You don't need to ask permission to any sort of corporate entity. Because of that, you get this explosion of creativity and net new behavior, and it's super invigorating and fascinating to see. On the other side, you may get an explosion of negative behavior as well, and apps you might not want to see. So I'm a big believer in, over time, it's going to, like, the blockchain network is where you want to be building, because you can't get censorship resistance. You can't own your data. You can't monetize the same way on the Web 2 platforms. And the pendulum has swung too far in favor of corporate networks in Web 2, and we need the pendulum to swing back. And, along the way, there may be some cons, but they're all, in my opinion, worth getting past. And as we kind of grow Farcaster, they become much less of an issue, I think. But
yep, I agree. A little bit about Twitter, or as an example of a centralized social media versus Farcaster as an example of decentralized. And Warpcast, which is the main client, as we mentioned, was built as sort of a Twitter-like interface, or a lot of people have said it's like Twitter and Reddit combined, but that's sort of text-based communication. And then Farcaster, as we mentioned, is decentralized, meaning the data is accessible in a variety of ways, whereas Twitter is centralized and it's all being sort of served to you from their servers themselves and being housed on their servers. So just, can you point out a couple examples, Adrian, of how these two might be different or similar in terms of centralized versus decentralized networks?
Yeah, I mean, just the first one on ownership and control, which is any existing social network that you're on is owned and controlled by a single company. So whether that's X or Meta or TikTok or ByteDance, which means they are in control and we as users aren't. We're subject to their policies and their control, and they're changing, and their algorithms as they change. Because Farcaster is a protocol, the protocol is owned and controlled by a decentralized network. It just means that there's no single one entity in control. I think there's related to that, and then this is kind of the last one listed, is like this user autonomy. Because you are reliant on a corporate network in the Web 2 world, we have no control as users. We're entirely dependent on the corporate policies. In the Farcaster world, because it is built on a blockchain network, we have full ownership and control of our account. So if Warpcast does not like what I am casting, they can't take my account away. They can't change my profile. They can't change my name, and they can't take my ability to communicate with other users away. And that's a guarantee. That's like guarantee by code, not by policy. I think the other big, to me, the best benefit is under interoperability. So in any of the Web 2 platforms, they may have APIs, but you're limited to what you can build based on what the policies on those APIs are. You don't have access to all of the data. You may have access to only what they want to give you. Because Farcaster is a protocol, there's infinite opportunity to, because you have access to all that data, is build and interoperate. And we call these Lego pieces. So when you come into Farcaster and in later modules, as we start walking you through how you use the feed and what is this, what you start to realize is you have a singular experience on something like Warpcast, which is a client, but a lot of the experience you have are actually Lego pieces from other companies. So there's concepts of frames and cast actions and channels and mini apps, but you have a very rich experience that is built from lots of companies and lots of corporates and lots of different app developers building this interoperable kind of future.
And that kind of brings us to this Farcaster ecosystem. So it is much bigger than just the protocol layer and Warpcast, which is the main client. And it includes, and this is just a small sampling of the different apps and clients that integrate into Farcaster. And a lot of what you'll see is that integration coming through something called Frames, and as well as mini apps now as well. So mini apps are a way to launch almost like a full-on website or game within the interface of right now Warpcast. So you're going to see a lot more of that sort of integration of the social graph into these different things that allows for this interop. So this is the Explore tab that we're looking at here, and it will show you some of those apps and cast actions as well as frames that might be of interest. And it's a great place to start to learn about some of these pieces of the puzzle. And kind of stepping back a little bit to the Farcaster ecosystem, there's a lot of different things you're seeing here. Some of them are clients. Some of them are apps that integrate into the protocol. And some of them are just accessing the protocol or social graph in order to provide an enhanced experience. So, for example, you might see some games that allow you to see how you stack up on a leaderboard with other Farcaster users. That's a way that it's using the social graph, but not really using any other data. But it's allowing you to sort of play that game with friends that you've met online. And that makes for a more rich and fun experience.
Yeah. I mean, imagine.
Well, go ahead.
Just imagine for your company or your brand, what you could do if you had programmable access. So you don't necessarily need to build a Farcaster client, but imagine creating a page off of your website that lets you invite, if you have events, inviting everyone who follows you on Farcaster in a programmable way, giving discounts to people, letting people unlock. So there's all sorts of applications that aren't necessarily social media applications, but are social versions of what they're of their app. You can kind of integrate with Farcaster easily.
One great example is Paragraph. So thinking about this as your blogging or newsletter experience that you may have, such as like Substack or Medium or something along those lines, but it is integrated directly into Farcaster so that when somebody opens up your newsletter within the Paragraph frame on Warpcast, they're going to get the full, rich reading experience right there without having to leave. They also will be able to subscribe to your newsletter right there. So it becomes this really useful tool within the environment that can tap into the different data points. Also, if you're leaving a comment on that post with Paragraph, it will show up on the Paragraph website as well. So it becomes this sort of interoperability between the two. And we're going to dive in more into all these pieces of the puzzle, frames and cast actions and composer actions and mini apps. So if you're not really following this at this point, don't worry. This is just an intro piece, and we're going to dive a lot more into frames. But here's a quick peek at a couple of different frames and cast actions or composer actions you might see. On one side, you have Bounty Caster, which is a way to post if you're looking to fill a job position, for example, or you want to offer up a project with a sort of short-term goal. You can add it via Bounty Caster in a frame using very simple couple of actions. And then on the other side, you have the Snickerdoodle Far IRL, which is an event frame that allows you to RSVP right there in the app, and then also see who else is attending, who might be following you or if you're following, so that you can connect with them as well prior to. And you can also have some programmable direct messaging that can connect with this as well. And we'll dive a lot more into frames in a whole separate module coming up soon. Anything you want to add, Adrienne, to that?
I just think one of the beauties of Farcaster when we talk about interoperability is if you're on other socials have been penalizing links lately. And maybe this has been quite, I know a lot of people have talked about this, but platforms don't want their users to leave. So if you're on X and LinkedIn and you're putting a link in your post, that gets penalized by the algorithm because you're sending people away from, let's say X, it's somewhere else. Farcaster loves links. And it's and Warpcast into particularly. So this is like an example of between Bounty Caster, between events. This is not Farcaster data, but it makes a very, very rich experience to send you outside of the platform. Like they're not trying to keep you in the platform, and if you do, and they're kind of creating just richer experiences within the platform from outside sources as well. So we'll dig into it in the future, but I think that's one of the biggest differences between Web3 and Web2 socials.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's something that's valued here. So in our next session, we're going to onboard you to Farcaster via Warpcast, and we'll be starting at farcaster.xyz. But if you want to jump ahead, you can go check it out there. And we'll be jumping into getting started with Farcaster as our next one. And before you join us on your next one, also we recommend going to Snickerdoodle's website, checking out the State of Farcaster report. It is really fascinating. You'll learn that 18 billion total value locked in the Farcaster ecosystem from this data. This includes, again, on-chain data. And it gives you a lot of information about the demographics, the audience that you'll engage with, and how this is a great place to build. And here's a little bit more information about what is in this report. So take a look at that and then join us back here for our next Farcaster 101, where we will chat more about how to get started with Farcaster. And until then, bye-bye. Farcaster 101 is an educational series brought to you by GM Farcaster in partnership with Snickerdoodle, building off of their State of Farcaster report, which you can access at snickerdoodle.com. This 12-part series introduces all aspects of the Farcaster ecosystem and helps you get started building your social graph and brand on Farcaster. GM, we are back with module 2 to walk you through the setting up a Farcaster account. And in module 1, we kind of went over the basics of what is Farcaster, what's a protocol. So if you missed that and jumped ahead, like many of my students do, you can go back and review that if you want a little more detail on some of the basics. But we're going to jump right in to the next phase of what we're going to be chatting about. And we're going to go through how to get started on Warpcast and walk you through it, including a video walkthrough of setting up your account. So we're going to be setting up your account. We're going to go through the profiles and settings that you'll find on Warpcast. We're going to talk about linking your wallet, either your Ethereum or Solana wallet. You can link to your account. We'll talk about the Farcaster currency warps and what those can be used for and how you find those and get those. We'll talk about getting your social graph started by following other Farcasters and channels. And also we'll get you sending your first cast. So we're going to start with a video of setting up this account that'll be narrated by Adrian. We'll go through downloading it at Farcaster XYZ, opening Warpcast, creating a new account, entering and verifying your email, paying the protocol fee. We'll talk about what that is, choosing a username, passkeys, notifications, syncing contacts, picking topics, and creating your profile. So let's shift on over to the video that we're going to run through. And Adrian, I'm going to let you take it from here.
All right, so we'll make sure you have access to this video as well. So if you want to follow along and pause, because as we walk through, it'd be great. Bring out your device and actually just do this. And by the end of this video, you'll have a Warpcast or Farcaster account. So you have to start actually not on a desktop, but on a mobile app. So whether it's iPhone, iOS, or Android account, start in the App Store. You're going to download an app called Warpcast. You can link to it if you go to warpcast.com or farcaster.xyz. We'll have a link to the app that you want to download. So you can start there. Start at farcaster.xyz, find the link to the app you're going to download. Once you download it, open the app. It's going to prompt you to create a new account. So you'll click there. It will ask you to enter an email address. So you'll put your email in. It will send you an email, ask you to verify it. Very familiar process flow you're probably used to with other apps. So click through verification. Once your email's been verified, you'll open up the app again. It will ask you to pay for the protocol fee. The protocol fee covers the storage costs for a year. It goes to the protocol, the Farcaster protocol, not to Warpcast, the company, or Warpcast, the client. At the time of this recording, the protocol fee is $5. It used to be more. They're working to make it less expensive. I heard rumors it might go down to $1. Once you do that, your account will be created. It's an on-chain transaction, so it may take longer than a millisecond, but be patient. Once your account is created, we'll ask you to pick a username. So choose the username, choose wisely. Can't change it later. So in our example, I'm choosing the username Free Compliment. This is a companion to a website called freecompliment.com. But choose your brand name. Once you've done that, it's going to ask you to secure your account with a passkey. Passkeys takes the place of username and password, which you might be familiar with. It is a more secure way of securing accounts. There's a Notion page. We'll add that as well if you want to learn more. But this is what a lot of consumer apps are moving toward because it is much more secure, and you'll authenticate like you do in your phone in this one, like with Face ID. So just continue.
And this also makes it easier that if you can get access back to your account if you had lost it. Makes it a lot easier to do that.
And then once you've secured your account with a passkey, Warpcast will just ask you whether you want push notifications on, whether you want to connect to your address, if you want to find people you already know, so you can choose whether you want to sync contacts. And then it asks you to pick topics that are interesting to you. This is for the algorithm, so it knows what type of content to serve you. So your choice of what you want to choose. Once you've done that, basic bio information. So what is your display name, which is different than your username, and a brief bio. Very similar if you're using X or Twitter. Basic profile information. It'll ask you to upload a photo. This is your PFP. You'll do that. And once that is done, voila, you're connected now to Warpcast. You've created your Farcaster account. This is what you see in the mobile app, which is just a kind of a default feed without a lot there. And this is what you're seeing here on the screen is what your profile looks like on the mobile page, which it shows you your username, your bio, your display name, your photo, and it tells you this user hasn't created any casts yet. Prof, what is a cast?
A cast is like a tweet or a post on other social media, and it is the way that you communicate to the Farcaster ecosystem. And the casts not only will live on Warpcast, but also on the protocol level. They're served through hubs out to all the other different clients that might be accessing the same information. So when you're casting, you're not only casting to Warpcast, if that's where you first set up your account, but you're also casting to things like Supercast and Wildcard and all these other different clients that are available now. All right, and we're going to move on to showing you this on desktop as well. So we're going to move on. We've set up your account. We're going to continue on desktop and show you how to continue on with going through all the different navigation. including profile and editing your profile, settings, sending your first cast, building your social graph, and linking your wallet or ENS. So Adrienne, we're going to go back over here and show us what we're going to do now.
All right. Yeah, so we're moving to desktop because it's bigger, easier to see. A lot of what I'm showing you, you can continue on the mobile app. But whereas you can't actually sign up without the mobile app, you need to create your account on the mobile app, but now you can move to desktop. So start off at warpcast.com and you're going to log in with phone, and you're going to use the phone you're already logged into that you created. You're going to use QR code. It's going to open up Warpcast. I'm doing this right live, and Warpcast is asking me if this is me actually logging in. And yes, it is. So I'm authenticating with my passkey and my Face ID. And this is what I see as a new user. This is the free complement. There's a default feed. It's showing me based on the information, like the topics I chose. So there's a default feed of content. This is all casts. And then on the left-hand side here.
Before you move on, Adrienne, I want to point out that even if you scroll all the way up to the top where it has your name, your other account, your Adrienne account, you're not following it yet. So if you wanted to follow that account, you can either click on the name or click on the little plus sign within that feed, and it will have you follow the account. So very easy to start building your social graph.
Very ironically, that the first cast, this is me signed in as a new brand account, but very ironically, it showed me my other account, Adrienne's first cast. So yeah, I'll show you that. I'm going to follow Adrienne. So
go follow Adrienne.
That little plus, and now I'm following
Everyone should follow Adrienne.
And here's TLDR, and I like Nietzsche, so I'm going to follow TLDR. So
let's go to the profile. Let's go back to the profile and show what that looks like. And that's going to be that little person icon will be your profile.
Second from the bottom, user. And this is showing me now. It's showing you everything we just created on the mobile app. So this is my display name, my username, my bio, my picture. There's a little nice handy edit profile, and we can change our profile stuff. So I can change my display name. I'll call it Get a Free Compliment. I'll change my bio. I'll add my website here. And it also gives you a place to add your location. This is optional. You don't have to do it, but if you do add a location, it makes it very easy to find other users in your location. Very handy if you're traveling, if you're going to conferences. Let's say you're at Eat Denver, you put Denver in your location, you can get access to everyone in Farcaster also at that location. So I'll put in New York, and I will save my profile. Okay, and now we're back. Here's your profile. You can see it updated my username, updated my bio. You can also see I'm now following 2 people, which we showed on the feed, but I have no followers yet. So should we walk through the rest of the settings?
Yes, let's go through the settings. And also, when we get back to the main profile, the hamburger menu too, the kebab menu as well. Okay. But first the settings.
So settings,
we went through the edit profile and then continue on with notifications. So there's a whole bunch of different options to what you may want notifications for, including things that are obviously crypto-centric, like DAO votes and things like that. So if you were a member of a DAO, that might allow you to get some notifications regarding that, as well as your standard things like unread messages. But you'll also see something channel streaks or nearby. Nearby would relate to location. Channel streaks would be if you have a streak in a channel that you are trying to keep up. So say you want to cast in books every day and share something from a book, and you're trying to create a habit, that's a great thing to be able to do. And if you want notifications on that, you would turn that on. And continue on, Adrienne. What else we got down there?
This is about emails. So whether or not you want Warpcast to email you with recommended users or weekly summaries of what you bookmarked. My recommendation, if you're new to Farcaster, keep all the notifications on. And if it becomes too much, then you can come and kind of trim it down. But
agree. Good idea.
Yeah. And going back to the settings after notifications, this is where you can verify a crypto wallet address. So you can show proof of ownership, and it links a crypto wallet that you already own to your Farcaster account. I've done this already with a wallet that I've owned, but you can do multiple wallets as well. You can import several crypto wallets. What this allows also, if you want to set up either direct payments or take advantage of a lot of the crypto native functionality, you're going to want to link an account. So this is, if you're familiar with crypto transactions, this will ask you through a wallet. It'll ask you to connect to a wallet and sign a transaction that shows that you own a certain wallet.
And this is really helpful for there are some monetization within Farcaster. So for example, if you are wanting to pay somebody directly online, there's a pay button. It will use their wallet to do that. And we have different tokens that exist within the ecosystem like Degen and Moxie. And again, we'll use that wallet to send those tokens to. There's also NFT minting directly within the feed. So it will often ask you which wallet you want to send that to. So all different options that may come up. So you may want to have a wallet that you like to use, that you currently use, connected with your account.
Yeah, and you can change it later, add later, but definitely take the time to connect a wallet. Next are settings related to direct casts. A direct cast is, again, a cast is just the Farcaster name for any sort of post. So a direct cast is similar to a direct message, or which is just private conversations between individual users. So now Nishprof and I can create a direct cast, which is a message to each other that other people can't see. You could also do group direct messages as well. So for group chats. And the settings here really are just kind of setting the behavior you want for who do you want to allow to direct message you or direct cast you, send you direct casts, whether it's only people you follow or a little bit wider and more open. The next setting is for actions. And as you can see, there's no actions installed here. There's a link out here to discover actions. This is referring to something called cast actions. I think we will put a pin in this and cover it in detail in a later section. In our first section, we talked a lot about how Farcaster is built with Lego blocks and being very dynamic and interactive. Cast actions are a way to make your feed more interactive and customizable. So no need on day one to understand what this is. Just know that that's there. And then you can manage muted words if you want to control your feed that way, similar to other social networks. So that is the basics of the settings.
Great. Can you go back to the profile and then just click on the little kebab menu to show there's one other area with some settings and some information. So you can either copy your link to profile, or if you click the about, you'll see your Farcaster ID as well as your Farcaster custody address. So your FID or your Farcaster ID is the same regardless of which client you are using. And that's where you would find that information. And then, Adrian, what is your Farcaster custody address?
So when you create your Farcaster account, it spins up a Ethereum wallet, which is actually how you're actually owning your account, which means no one can take it away. This wallet is secured through your passkey. So because you have your Face ID, Warpcast, there's no one else who can take this away. It is a full Ethereum wallet that your Farcaster account is attached to.
So even if you don't attach another wallet to it, you do have one that is built in, and that would be a default. Adrian, let's go through the navigation on the left-hand side just to kind of talk through all the other things. So this is your home feed, and within the home feed, you're going to have home, which is going to be based on an algorithm built for you. You'll have trending, which is going to be what is trending on Farcaster, on Warpcast right now. And you'll see what's happening there. And this is a really good way when you're new to find people to follow as well. Because if they're trending and they have trending casts, they're obviously producing some interesting content that you might find interesting as well. And then you have frames. Frames is we're going to go into detail more in our next module, but frames are sort of embedded additional mini apps almost, if you will. And they have different purposes, but we'll go into detail in our next module, but that's where you can find some that are trending there. And then all channels will show you all the different channels that you are following. But since we are not following any yet, we will return to that when we are. And let's just continue on. What's the next one? Notifications. So these are any notifications that you have based on your settings. So all is going to be anything that's priority. Mentions is going to be anytime you were mentioned, and follows will be new followers that you may have.
Next are direct casts. So this is where we'll send up your private messages, and they'll show up here. Next is the Explore tab, or searching which Warpcast is giving you suggested users to follow. So this is a good place to come if you want to start building your social graph. Dan Ramirez, the founder of Farcaster, seems like a good person to follow. So you can kind of come here and start.
That guy, Ted, he's great. People. Oh, I mean, she. Follow Ted. She has good stuff.
And then channels. Yeah, so what are channels?
And channels are different topic-based little areas of Farcaster where content is going to be related to whatever the topic is, or whatever you set up if you're creating your own channel. And we're going to have a whole separate module on channels and creating channels. But for now, what you can do is scroll through and look for things that are interesting to you. Memes is always a good one. It'll bring you some smiles, bring the lulls. And Founders is one of my favorites because it has some great information. If you are an entrepreneur or working on a startup, it has some great insights, always fantastic. And then there's things like fitness and music, and it really things based on your interests. So you may see brands that have their own channels. You may see people that have their own channels, and you may see topic related channels that are a little bit broader. So go through and look for things that look interesting to you and follow them. It will definitely start to improve your feed. And you can always unfollow if something is not interesting or is not what you expected.
All right, so moving down, the next icon is for inviting friends. So this is once you become a Warpcast whiz and you want other people to come, this is where you can send out invites.
When you fall in love and you just want to share it with the world.
The next are bookmarks. So nothing to see here, but if you want to flag a cast for later, and I'll show you what that looks like. On any given, this little icon will allow you to bookmark a cast. And you can refer back to it later. So now when I come to bookmarks, it's going to show me casts that I've saved for later.
And then we have warps. So Adrienne, what are warps?
All right, so warps are an in-app currency that you can use to pay for certain things within Warpcast. Right now, the primary use case for warps is for creating channels. I will say channels are in flux right now, so we'll see. At this point, they cost 2,500 warps. The price of a warp is about one penny per warp, and these are not tokens. The price won't change. They're not meant to be speculative. It's a way for it uses Coinbase Commerce. You can go and buy warps, and there's ways. There's within Warpcast you're going to use it to purchase things. You can also gift warps to someone once you have them, as a way of tipping. If you like someone's cast, there's a way to gift warps. So to a cast. And let's say I see a yuga.eth. If I ever make it, I will post compulsively. And I think this is worthy of giving someone a 10 warp tip. There's a shortcut here where I can gift 10 warps. Now I don't have any, so it won't work. So I won't do it.
And you can also pay them directly. So if you saw something and you wanted to send them USDC, you could do it there. Or if you had some kind of transaction that you were following up on, you can do it there or from their profile. So either way. And then there's a few other notes here if you want to continue on. Why is this cast here? What does that tell you?
So this is information about why the algorithm is feeding you a certain cast. This is just Warpcast's effort to be more transparent. So the algorithm is not fully a black box. You can give the algorithm feedback. So if you want to see fewer casts like this, it will remember. You can copy a cast hash. That's more for developer information. Report cast if you find something to be fraudulent or spammy or scammy, or you don't, or abusive or any other reasons. You can report a cast. You can mute the user or block a user. So similar types of activities from other social networks.
Great.
All right. Should we create our first cast?
Let's create a cast.
All right.
What are you going to say? I think a hello world is always a good start, but maybe a little more info.
Okay, so I'm casting from freecompliment.com, and I think we can give someone a compliment.
I think that's a great idea. Who are we going to compliment?
Oh, good question. I'm going to compliment you, Nounish Prof.
I thank you. And you did something there where you typed in a user's name and then you were able to tag them. So that will provide a notification if they have notifications on for mentions. It will pop up in their notifications. So that fantastic. And then I can reply back as well when I see that.
When you cast, you can just type something like you would on X or Twitter and hit cast and it goes to your feed. You can also choose a channel to post this into. So these are the channels probably that I follow, but I can also search and post into other channels as well. I had mentioned we're going to do a deeper dive into channels in a later module because not all channels are open for anyone to post into. Some of them you need membership into, but I'm just going to post this to my home feed. So cast. If I go to my profile page now, it will show that if Prof now opens up her Warpcast, she should see a notification that someone tagged her. And
it's there.
And that'll show up.
It's there. And now I'm going to like it. And I'm going to say, thanks. And
could you follow? And can you follow the free compliment account as well? And then once
I am also going to do that.
We'll and give a little refresh.
I'm also going to give this compliment some warps. So I just gifted 10 warps as well. And when you refresh, you should see the reply. There we go.
So now I can click in and there's a reply. I can like the reply. My notifications tab alerted up. So I can click there and see that Nounish Prof gifted me 10 warps. That means I now have 10 warps.
And you also see my reply. So, and you'll see the replies to any of your casts as well.
And I can.
So that gives you all the basics, I think. Is there anything we missed, Adrian, that we were going to chat about? I think we hit them all.
That is the basics of, all right. And we covered everything from how to first download your Warpcast mobile app so you can create your account, pay for storage, using the desktop app, signing in, and modifying your profile, getting familiar with all of the settings, learning how to follow people and create your social graph, finding channels to follow so you have content in your feed of topics that are interesting to you, and sending your first cast, as well as how to link a wallet and your so you have that crypto.
Fantastic. And then on our next module, we're going to go through frames, using them and as well as creating them and going through different use cases, some popular frames, and how to get started there. So we are excited to bring you that next module. If you missed our first one, go back and kind of get those basics. And with this one, you can go through and stop, pause, and really set up your account. And if you are using this and you set up your account, be sure to follow us, tag us, say hello. We'll follow back. And we'll also maybe gift you some orbs. So make sure you do that. And that's it for now. We'll see you in module 3. Bye-bye.